Now, if you've been paying careful attention throughout the movie so far, we have finally reached the culmination of all else taken in. Everything we've been exposed to comes into play here in the Jupiter and Stargate sequences. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, like someone we know, then this part will seem as the safest of the movie, but your understanding of it will be shallow at most. Roll the tape.
So in the last part, I promised you all something resembling a film. And here we have it. I can sum it up in one word: Hal. Hal the computer is the only character we will ever get in this film. But the thing is, he's a damn good one. I can't come out and say that this particular part of the film is about nothing the way everything else is, so that's a good plus right there. But the problem is, it still drags. We do get a lot of good character stuff, and there is some chemistry between Hal and Dave as they play physical chess with one another.
What a shock. You like this part of the movie. Now, before I really dig into you here, I just want to point out yet another hysterical irony. The Jupiter sequence, where Hal seems to go insane and attempts to murder the human crew members one by one. What movie genre is this sequence directly taken from? Now, ignoring for now that it's a computer slowly stalking and killing people rather than, oh, I don't know, say a motel-owning psychopath who dresses up like his mommy, what genre of movie is this now? Go ahead, Google the clue I just gave you. I'll wait. It's the horror movie genre. That's right, Matthew. The only part of the movie you like and attempt to analyze is the one part of the movie you openly admit that you are not qualified to analyze. I think I'm going to be sick. And so here we go again, Matthew. You seem to get the basic premise of what is happening here, but since you haven't been bothering to ask any meaningful questions up until now, you have none of the knowledge required to make any of the connections and begin asking the higher level of questions. And so, as with every other part of this movie, you make no attempt at interpretation or correlation with the other parts of the movie. In fact, you seem to be bragging about how you don't think that there are any connections at all. This is not something to brag about, Matthew. This is something that you should keep to yourself. Sure, you do make an attempt, your first so far, to interpret Hal and his behavior, but since this is your only attempt at interpretation for the entire film, your interpretation is pedestrian at best and wrong at worst. But that's only to be expected since you freely admit that you don't think any of this has anything to do with the rest of the film.
Problem is, it's all completely unrelated to the rest of the film.
Allow me to explain.
The questions surrounding Hal have to do with his personhood. Is he a machine that can do the thinking of a human being, or is he simply a machine that is programmed to simulate the thinking of a human being?
To begin with, you're asking the wrong question here. You're close, but it's still not correct. The question is, can an artificially intelligent computer be conscious? And if so, is Hal? This may seem superficially like semantics, but it's not, and here's why. Hal's personhood, as you put it, is clearly established in the story via his well-defined and distinct traits of individuality long before he begs for his life. What we are after here is whether or not Hal is conscious. And here is the amazing part if you've been actually paying attention to the movie. Hal isn't conscious at first, and then he is. And you miss it completely because you were busy trying to be clever rather than witnessing this same exact scenario of a non-conscious being evolving consciousness played out during the Dawn of Man sequence at the very beginning of the film. Now, what gives the consciousness to man? The monolith. And what is in orbit around Jupiter right now with Hal? The monolith. My God, man. There's even a music cue indicating the moment Hal becomes conscious. And so now, what does Hal do with his new consciousness? The exact same thing that the ape-man did with his. He fights to improve his chances for survival, which manifests, just as it did with the ape-man, in violence. Kubrick is giving you so much here, man, if only you'd pay attention. Now this leads us to why Hal, even with his total control of the ship and far superior intellect, still loses the fight to Dave. Hal has only been conscious for a few hours. Mankind has been conscious since, go ahead, say it if you know, the dawn of man. This is cyclical storytelling going on here, Matthew. You must be present throughout in order to have a chance of comprehending. And here you go again. You make no comment at all about Kubrick's inspired and revolutionary use of the silence of space rather than over-the-top sound effects. Nothing regarding the fact that this entire sequence represents, within a film that already changed the sci-fi genre forever, a landmark in horror film genre, as well as brilliantly expanding on the methods of conveying minimalist terror previously explored by Hitchcock and Vincent Price, paving the way for modern horror, something he would do again a decade later with The Shining. You ignore the groundbreaking use of fully functional moving sets, or the amazingly accurate vision of Jupiter and its moons, a vision not fully confirmed until the Voyager missions. You don't attempt to acknowledge Kubrick's use of breathing instead of music, or even ask the rather telling question of why there is no music in this scene as opposed to the last scene. You make no comparison of the desolation of space as it relates to the desolation at the beginning of the film, and on and on and on. It's exhausting pointing out how bad you are at this. If you'll indulge me here, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to paraphrase your entire review of 2001. It's boring, it's about nothing, but Hal was kind of cool, you guess. That about right? Wow, Matthew. Bold stance you're taking here. Thinking that 2001 is boring is the first, last, and only legitimate subjective criticism ever lauded against the film in over 40 years, and the audience of 2001 has always been divided into two camps. Those that understand it intrinsically and build a deeper understanding from there, and those that don't and don't. That you are in the latter camp, while technically fresh information, hardly comes as a shock to those of us who've watched your other movie reviews. So this brings us to the reason I decided to write this little rant of mine in the first place. Remember way back at the beginning when I mentioned the word irresponsible? Let's play the clip.
Now, for the uninitiated, for those who have never seen this film before in your life, listen to me carefully and don't listen to anyone else. That's a pretty bold statement for me, but I have to make it anyway. Don't watch it. Nothing happens. When you get to this part of the film, turn it off.
It is beyond my capacity to fathom why you would, as a lover of movies and an aspiring film critic, say something so monstrous. I'm going to hold off on tearing you apart over this bullshit for now, but I just wanted everyone to hear you say it before moving on.
Nothing happens. Colors, light, noise, landscape.
So surprise, surprise, you don't get the ending. You don't try, and at this point it's crystal clear that you're incapable of trying. It fucking boggles the mind watching you play clips of things happening while you complain about how nothing is happening. He flies to the monolith, then threw it into a tunnel of some kind, as indicated by the forward momentum. Oh, and by the way, it's not called colors. That's called slit scanning, and it was yet another revolution at the time in special effects. It's far from murky that the monolith is actually a Stargate now at this point, and it's taking him and his spaceship somewhere very far away from where he was originally. This, ironically enough, is not rocket science here, man. All you have to do is watch. He witnessed stellar birth, he sees nebula formation, he sees cubes that are most likely alien spacecraft, his perspective shifts and he is taken to a landscape, again most likely alien. The still shots of his face indicate not only his inability to handle the experience as it happens to him, but also that time is seeming to stand still for him. I mean, come on, man. Can't you take off the jerk hat for 5 minutes and just watch the fucking movie?